today's workshop. Our speaker is Glen Stafford. Glen is the FIP Jury Fellow. He's also the chairman of the FIP Aerophilately Commission. He was also the chairman of the jury for the AMSI 2025. He's an executive member of the FIAP. He's the past president and international officer of the APF. He's a fellow of the Royal Philatelic Society London, member of the Royal Philatelic Society of Victoria, active collector for 21 years and 42 years in medical imaging. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Glen Stafford. Glen, over to you.
Thank you very much, PK. Really appreciate the introduction. It makes me sound like I'm an expert on things, but I'm like everyone. I'm always learning, and I think that's the important part of our hobby is we learn and we share what we learn. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, okay, that's good. So I'm just going to move everyone up. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk with fellow aerophilatelist and astrophilatelists. I enjoy exhibiting, I enjoy judging, I enjoy just collecting and talking about the hobby. So it's a good way to start, and happy to share my knowledge. So tonight I'm going to be speaking about the guidelines. I'm going to be speaking about how to exhibit and how we judge based on the guidelines. So it's important that you, as an exhibitor, you understand what the judges are looking for. And it's important for judges to know what the exhibitors are going through by being an exhibitor themselves. So you've just had my introduction. So this is basically a summary of everything. I've been an active collector since I was 21 years old, so it's been quite a while. The cartoon on the right-hand side was a gift to me on my 30th birthday, a famous cartoonist in the local paper over here. Pretty much how I used to be, wearing flares and desert boots, and always wore a tie, etc. So it's fond memories of age gone by. So I think what we will do is, if anyone's got any questions, if they want to put it in the chat line and we can answer them at the end. If it's an urgent question, just break in and we'll manage it straight away. I just want to introduce the commission from Australia, and I'm the commission chair. David Liu from China is the secretary. I've got Jan from Singapore. I've got Frederick Udell from Sweden, and Mark Banchek from the USA, who just recently has been appointed president of the American Philatelic Society. So congratulations to him. Aldo's our FIP consultant. Charles Bromster and my wife Johanna Stafford manages the website. So if you just Google Aerophilately FIP, you should get our website. I'd like everyone at some stage to go and have a look at it. We're actively improving it at all times. You can see there's a whole range of resources that we have. I'd like people to comment, send us an email if they'd like to add something. We're always wanting to put more videos, put more talks on. So anything you can contribute. It is meant to be a world resource for Aerophilately. So for those, I will put this my notes on the Aerophilately website, so that'll probably be done the next week. So you don't need to furiously be writing everything down. You should be able to have access to all that. So the web page is hosted by FIP, so they own the website. We just contribute to it. As I said, Charles and Johanna do the actual website. We like to update with news on exhibiting and judging Aerophilately. The rules are constantly being evaluated and looking how we can improve. The guidelines have been evaluated, how we can explain things better. So we're constantly updating things. If you have literature from your country, we'd like to list it. It's nice for someone to be able to go and see what sort of airmail literature there is around the world and that they may be able to access it. This page is for you guys, so please keep telling us what you want to add to this. Just having a look on how Aerophilately is going on the world stage, and here's the results from IBRA just on Aerophilately. And as you can see on the right hand side, gold, large gold special prizes. We actually have a lot of active airmail exhibitors, and they're achieving very good results. So what we're doing well, and people are coming to the class. Often they start with traditional, they might go to postal history, but a lot of people find that the challenge of aero is very interesting. Also, if I look at Cape Town at FIP level, again, a nice range of exhibits that have been shown throughout, and you can see Mark and Dave's Rocket Mail gold on 5 frames. Very hard to get gold at 5 frames, so he's done very well at that point. Again, Indonesia, other people's results. So it's just the reason I'm putting that up is just to let you know that and encourage you to keep entering Aero, keep working on your exhibits, and hopefully this is where the talk will carry through. So let's just look at a couple of things at FIP level. The first thing is what we call the GREVs. That's the general regulations for all classes. So that's the rules that you need to read to see how we judge your exhibit, and where the points are allocated. Then if you want to really drill down, you go to the SHREVs, which is special regulation, which is by each class. So if you do traditional, there'll be a SHREVs for traditional. If you do aero, there's a SHREVs for aero, and if you do postal history, etc. So that's the starting point when you're exhibiting, is to know the GREVs and SHREVs. Now, we put with the SHREVs a set of guidelines to explain the SHREVs by class. The problem is the SHREVs are quite accurate, but because English is not everyone's native language, can be a little bit confusing. So what we're trying to do is make sure our guidelines explain in more detail what the SHREVs is about. So the purpose of the guidelines is to explain the SHREVs. Why is it necessary? It's because we want to make sure people fully understand it. We don't have 2 sets of rules. They're the same rules, and we integrate it. Now, just before COVID, all the classes got together and decided to harmonise the guidelines so the wording would be similar or the same in each of the guidelines. So where there's an explanation for presentation in trad, it'll be the same explanation in aero, the same explanation in postal history. Where we're similar, same explanation. Where we change, then there'll be different explanations. So that is the problem with having SHREVs and guidelines. People read the SHREVs, read the guidelines, thinks there's 2 sets of rules. There's not. So we're trying to make sure that everything is in the first person and that we can understand what's going on. So again, I said in 2019, the Commission's chairs and secretaries met together. We've simplified the wording. We replaced very lengthy sentences with short sentences and bullet points where that makes sense. So at that time we asked, do we need both SHREVs and guidelines? Because it would be nice just to have one to stop the confusion. However, the FIP board says that we need to have both, so both we have. So most of what I'm going to talk about is the new guidelines or the updated guidelines for Aerophilately. So again, the SHREVs and guidelines are converted into one set of rules. The new guidelines were approved by our delegates and the federations and by the board. Normally changes to guidelines have to be approved by the board, but changes to SHREVs must be approved by FIP Congress. So very difficult to change the SHREVs. The guidelines is a lot easier if it makes sense to the board. Then we've only got 7 people to convince. So here is the website for where the guidelines are, and what I would really like you guys to do is to download the guidelines and read them, and then read them, and then read them, and get to know them inside out, because that's the only way you're going to fully understand how I can get a good result in Aerophilately. So when you download it, the first thing you should see is the word guideline for judging aerophilatic exhibits, and final on the 8th of August 2022. If it doesn't have that date on, that is not the most recent guideline. So trace that down and make a copy, and it should read introduction, these guidelines, etc., etc. And so my explanation is on these latest guidelines. So the guidelines contain information that's in the SHREVs and the previous guidelines, but we just want you to work with one document and without repeating anything. So that's why I'm suggesting that you just download the guidelines and work from the guidelines. The guidelines are going to cover exhibiting, so what is a good aero exhibit, judging, how we judge an aero exhibit. The good thing about the guidelines, if you know how the judges think, give the judges what they want and you'll get better marks. Of course, with any document, you need to know it inside out. So you need to read it first, get a feel for it. You need to talk to your friends about it, read them again, and just keep reading them until you know what the guidelines and you fully understand. If you don't understand something in the guidelines, send the Commission an email and we'll do our best to explain it to you. All right. What I'm trying to do with the Commission is we've got an English version up there. Ari is putting together a Finnish version for us. I've got an Arabic version. I need volunteers for a Spanish version. I'd really like a Spanish version of the guidelines because we have a lot of Spanish speaking people. I've got a Chinese version. I'd also like a French version and a German version, because sometimes in the native language, things are clearer than trying to work it out in English if that's your second language. So if anyone that speaks can translate accurately both French, Italian, and German, please let me know. I'd love to get those versions. All right, so let's get stuck into it. The first part is there's 2 sections to an aero exhibit. We have subclass A and subclass B. So the very first subclass A is all about postal documents that have been dispatched by air. So all your airmail covers that have gone through the post and by air, that is the subclass. So it can take all types of postal and other markings. We're looking for vignettes and labels relating to aerial transportation. Items connected with particular means of aerial transport, but not necessarily conveyed through the postal system, could be deemed important to the development of the airmail. So often in the development, it wasn't contracted by the postal system, things were done. And if it's part of the story, then that's part of what we want in subclass A. Leaflets, messengers, newspapers dropped by air as way of normal postal delivery, or postal services interrupt by unforeseen events, airmail crashes, etc. Mails recovered by aircraft accidents and incidents. So this is the postal history of airmail, is basically subclass A. Subclass B is the traditional part of airmail or aerophilately. So we have official or semi-official stamps that were issued specifically for airmail service in both mint or used conditions, and particularly on covers. We still want to see them on covers. Therefore, you can treat this like a traditional exhibit by showing any forms of essays, proofs, varieties associated with the airmail stamp. We also include postal stationery. So if you've got a beautiful aerogram exhibit, please put it in Aerophilately and not postal stationery. You'll do better in Aerophilately. So two subclass A, which is basically the rates, routes, markings, the development of the air miles services, and subclass B, which is the actual stamps used for that air miles services. So let's look at what is essential for a good exhibit. So a good exhibit, first of all, is understanding the rules. So the problem is the rules will always tell you what to do, but they won't tell you how to do it. So you've got a set of rules that says you need this, this, and this, but you need to know how to do it. The most essential part, no matter what class you're in, is every exhibit must tell a story. It cannot just be a series of covers. It's got to have a theme. It's got to have a story. If we call it treatment, but if you replace the word treatment with story, maybe you'll understand what most of our rules are about. A good title page is essential. Like anything, like a book, we look at the cover. If it looks interesting, if it tells me what we want, then we're going to have a look at it further. So a good title page is very important. I've been on many international juries, and the amount of poor title pages still today is unbelievable. So we've really tightened up what's required on a title page. So just in the grades alone, it says, no matter what class you're in, the title should describe the content of the exhibit. So therefore, if it's Indian airmail, if you just say Indian airmail, does that describe what that exhibit's about? Probably not. It's a pretty big scope. Maybe it's the development in the first 10 years. The title needs to tell us exactly what you're trying to do. A lot of our exhibitors think a little bit of a sexy title sounds good, but once you confuse the judge with the title, then there's a good chance they're going to be confused with everything else. So let's keep our titles describing exactly what it's going to be. We need an introductory statement that pretty much gives us the idea and exhibit of what you're going to show us. Some people use an introductory statement 3/4 of the title page telling us where the country is, and most of us, if we clicked in arrow, we know where India is, we know where England is, we know where France is. You don't need to describe the country. What you need to do is tell us what your concept is. State a purpose of the exhibit. This exhibit will show the development of the airmail between Belgium and France. Whatever it is, we need to know what your purpose is. Then define the scope. It's got to be a discrete period of time or events or something, but you must tell us what the boundary is. We need a start and we need an end with the scope. And then hopefully the story in the middle is good. Plan of the exhibit. We need to know on the title page how the exhibit's going to run. So a plan is what we need on the exhibit. We need a rarity statement. We need you to tell us how you're identifying rare items and where your information comes for these rarities. So it's pretty important you get a rarity statement. And what's also important is you have some references on that title page. The important references that you have used to develop this exhibit. Recently, people are putting Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not a literature reference because we have no idea which part of Wikipedia you're looking at. Even if you put us the link on your title page, it could disappear. So please use literature references from hard books. All right. Content of an aero exhibit. What can be shown? Of course, covers, aero covers, including postcard, aero postal stationery, aero stamps, all airmail markings, including Joshua and cancellations annulment markings and airmail label. It really depends on the story that you're telling and the title of the exhibit. Treatment. Aerophilately subject normally combines routes, rates, and markings. That's for subclass A. For subclass B, it's going to be the stand. So, skills and thoughts are required to do this successfully. So, I've told you that treatment is a story. We need a beginning, we need a middle, we need an end for this story. So, how do we arrange the exhibit? Well, a good starting point is often chronological. However, that may not suit the way you want to tell the story. You might do it by rate periods. So therefore, each rate period, each rate amount, each zone can be in different areas. Or it can be an event like World War II, which changed a lot of the airmail routes. So do remember, we need a start and an end date, and make sure it's logical. For instance, if it's World War II, you might be 39 to 45. If it's the end of a rate period, so have a reason other than I've run out of pages in my 5 frames or 8 frames. So you need to make sure you have strength throughout the exhibit and that you have logical starts and endings. Most times your start and end date will depend on the airmail service and the country that you're showing. Make sure you have a balance between the sections. It's not always possible, but don't have a very 1 or 2 pages at the beginning, then you've got 5 frames at the middle, and then just 1 or 2 frames towards the end. See where possible that you balance it out and try to avoid large amounts of padding. We can tell when you're duplicating things quite easily, so that's something you need to avoid. So, on the guidelines, in 3.4 of the guidelines, it says introductory sheet or title page. This is the exact wording. An exhibit should have a clear beginning, a central theme, and a logical ending. We've been just talking about that. All Aerophilately exhibits must include an introductory sheet or title page. This should consist, and this is mandatory. You cannot avoid any of these things. The judges need to see this on your title page. The title of the exhibit, number 1. Very short praises of any general information on the subject. You should be able to do it in just 1 paragraph. Then describe the purpose of the exhibit. Remember, this exhibit is going to show you in chronological order the development of the airmail route between Nicaragua and South America. All right, so that's a pretty important part. Then a description of the scope, why you've started here, why you've finished there, the actual scope, and what areas you're not covering, because you're specialising. Then don't say, I'm omitting this cover and that cover because I can't afford it. What I'm talking about is omission is an area of this topic that you're not covering. So that's what it is, not a particular item. It's essential to have a plan on your title page, and it can be as simple as chapters this, and this, a description. But rather than trying to make it frame by frame or page by page, try to make it condensed but actually telling you the story that you're going to do. Please put any personal research that you've done, reference the articles on your title page. It's good for us to know as judges what personal research not only have you done, but you've documented. And that goes a long way to getting the marks in research and knowledge. And of course, list the most important literature references that you can find. These are all mandatory and must be on every title page. So please, when you finish here, when you've got time, pull out your title page, have a look at the guidelines, look at 3.4. Do you have each of these? And if you don't, what do you have that we don't need, and how can you put these in here? And I'll give a couple of examples. All right, so this is Norman Banfield's. As you can see, everything that we ask for is on this title page. Title, clear and concise. Russia, It's airmail service between 1922 to 1950. So he's just told us pretty much the scope and the title in the same time. An introductory statement. You can see just the first paragraph giving a bit of an introductory statement. He then goes and tells us the purpose of this exhibit by saying this exhibit shows. Now, he's put a box to emphasize what he's showing, but that's not essential. You're still in control of your exhibit, but these are some ideas you can have a look at. As you can see, there's a plan. He's lists the sections of the development of that airmail routes. And he's used sections rather than frame 1, frame 2, etc. He's also put a rarity statement. He's indicated how he's going to identify the rarest statement. And really on top of that, you should point to where that rarity information comes from. So if you've got a reference or you're quoting references, please put it there. Then ideally show 5 or 6 references that you're doing. I will give you some books that you can start looking at to improve your exhibit, and then you can add those references into your title page. So this is a good subclass A title page. All right, so his example is Russian airmail 1922 to 1950. He's saying that the 1950 may be a bit obscure, but it was the end of a rate period. He could tighten it up and specialise it if he got more Russian-German service between Moscow and Berlin, between that very difficult period 40-41, and then change it to 22 to 41. So it's important that the title actually reflects what you're trying to show. He's given us a good introductory statement in the first paragraph. He stated the purpose. He showed us what he's going to show, and he's placed it in the box emphasise. He has a plan. He's stated the sections. That's what we like as judges. He's given us good references. He's also put a photo in just to make it look a little bit sexy. That's fine, but not too big. What's more important is the information you put on the page, not the pretty picture or the nice item that you want to put on there. But it does invite people to look at the exhibit. All right, so this is my title page, Nicaraguan airmail stamps. So this is subclass B. So it's 1929 to 37. I've defined the scope pretty much in my title. I've given a one paragraph introduction, just why I'm doing this. I've then given a good scope statement explaining where the story starts and where it's going to end. And not only where it's going to end, but why it's ended there. I've also been very obvious in my treatment. I've said this traditional Aerophilately, in brackets subclass B, just in case we have new judges or judges that haven't kept up with the rules. I'm trying to encourage the judges to do the right thing. So I'll put it in my treatment statement. I'll put rarity statement. I'm telling you what I'm going to define as rare, and I've put it into blue ink. Now, it's not essential to put an important statement. But if the importance of your exhibit is always going to get 6 or 7, it's very hard to get a large gold when you only have 5 points maximum. You can lose out of 100 if you want to get a large gold. So I try to encourage the judges to consider how important my exhibit is compared to what they think. So I actually put an important statement in there. Not mandatory, but I would recommend it. I'll put in a very simple plan so they know where it's all going. I'll put in my references and just showing a little map that shows Nicaragua and the FAM5 route, because really these stamps were developed for the FAM5 route. So we've done the title page. The title of the title page does not have to be on every page in your exhibit. We see this on very new exhibitors. Indian airmail, then for 128 pages, the first thing I read is Indian airmail. You get very cranky after a while, so please use the title and then use subheadings on all your other pages. Do not use that. You're wasting a line that can be used for other information. Section headings on the first page of each section should be larger than the normal text, so you should consider capital letters if that work. You can bold the section headings, you can underline them, or you could colour them. But please, and I know people like using a lot of colours, don't use a lot of different colours, and don't change the font. Change the size of the font, but don't keep changing the font. 2 is probably the most you want to do if you want to separate the information from Aerophilately to maybe social or some difference like that. All right, other pages in sections, use page headings for the items. 2 headings in the same line save space, and I'll show you. So if we go back up here, we have a look at Norm Banfield's Russian airmail route. We know that it's via Persia, USA. Very simple. So the next page, Persia to South America during World War II. So keep the headings as simple as possible, but make sure they flow. In this case, he's put all the route information in bold because it's the development of the routes, and that's the major thing. Censor marks, non-aero information, leave to the end. It's important that you describe them, but don't highlight them up early because it's still in subclass A. It's the rates, routes, and markings that's most important. Can you overlap? Typically, we prefer not. Small overlapping is okay. If you overlap every cover, then judges are suspicious that you're covering information up or that you're covering up bad covers. For instance, you might have a tear at the bottom of a cover and you're trying to cover it. So where possible, do not overlap. If you're going to overlap, make sure you don't lose any other information. Airmail labels and jusqu'où markings. Jusqu'où, for me, my French is not, it means until or up to. So in the beginning times, we would fly from one destination to another, then it would carry on via ship. For instance, my mail from Nicaragua would fly up to Miami, it'd be trained up to New York, it would then be shipped across to Europe. So all those markings. So where do I find information about that? So here there's a good book on airmail labels, the catalogue of airmail labels by Gunter Mears. So you should have a look at this where you can. It's 2 volumes, 626 pages, really good information. Book on jusqu'où markings by Ian McQueen. He's also got supplements that he's brought out to include the cancellations and almond marks. Airmail directional hand stamp by Ian McQueen. So as you can see, there is other information you can look for to start developing and increasing your knowledge, even on your specialised airmail route. All right, so here's jusqu'où marking from Nicaragua. And as you can see, it's crossed out the airmail etiquette with 2 bars. This is applied in New York. The stamps, the airmail stamp pays the airmail rate. The other 3 stamps now pay the local surface rate. So this is one of those covers that flew to Miami up to New York and then shipped across to Europe. It's also an idea to start looking at aircraft movements, and you need to either look at newspaper clippings or to get official flight numbers, exact dates. This will show knowledge. You've got 35 marks to find and fill with knowledge, and this is another way of doing it. Often not easy to find the references, but here again is a couple of books that you can look at. Aircraft Movements on Imperial Airways. They have the 2 volumes of the Eastern routes and 1 volume of the African routes. Very, very good books. Intercontinental Airmails by Proud, 3 volumes. Bridging the Continent in Wartime, very good book. And Airmail Operations during World War II. So these are just some of the books that you need to look and think outside your sphere of knowledge to improve your knowledge on your exhibit. Maps. Maps can be a critical part of explaining where the MR route is, but please restrict the map to just the route. You don't need to show all of Europe to show between one town to another. Just show us that route. So keep your maps specific to the area that you're telling the story. Do not just put in a big map. So as you can see, this is just a really nice cover. There's a reduced copy of the back of the cover, and we're able to squeeze a map in there just to give you an idea of this route in the earlier years. Now, here's a note on this cover. This cover is dated 22 July 1922. So someone's been watching the auctions, and recently they described the earliest recorded cover was the 29th of July. So this was had by the exhibitor. You may be sitting on information that we're not aware of. So a catalogue will describe earliest known cover based on published data. If you haven't published it, then they're not going to know and give you the credit for it. So have a look at yours and compare them with known published data. First flight covers. So the old style aero, everything concentrated, this first flight cover here, first flight cover there. What we're now more interested in, after the first flight, was there commercial or private airmail covers available? So, and these may be harder to get than the actual first flight covers, which were kept by collectors typically. So, does first flight covers have a place in exhibit? You bet. They tell you when that flight first started. But if you can prove the start of commercial airmail service, which is often the second or third flight, then that's also good research. So best if you can follow, always by commercial mail. How many covers per page? We've seen covers one per page, 128 pages, looking very thin. It tells us that the exhibitor has not got the right story. They're trying to fill in with a lot of information, where they're often duplicating information from one page to another. So typically, you need 2 covers per page on a standard page. So therefore, if you've got 2 items per page, you're looking around 230 covers for an 8-frame exhibit. So you need to be accumulating around 300-400 covers. So you have a good selection of covers to do the best condition, the most appropriate, the earliest known, etc., for the story that you're trying to tell. Even with the European size, which is like a square cover, by putting the information to the left or the right of it is the way to go. All right, there will be some pages where you have a very nice cover. It's the only one known, the only one you've seen, maybe 2 of 3, 1 of 3, sorry. Then put a single cover on a page, but don't do that page after page after page, or else it doesn't stand out. Those covers will then stand out. So any special item, so let's just have a look at a special item. So in this case, we've got a cover. It's been red matted to tell us. Nelson Eustace says there's 3 covers flown to Russia, so they're extremely rare. So this cover is worth telling us a bit more about it and everything. But if you put every page 1 cover with this much information, you're duplicating information in other areas. Exhibits. So and judging are two sides of the same coin. So basically, judges are also exhibitors. To be a judge, you have to be an exhibitor. You have to at least got a large from a international 8 frames before you can do an apprenticeship. So therefore, you've got the runs on the board, and you've got to keep exhibiting to maintain your judges' qualifications. All right. So how are we going to judge your exhibit? So this is the same points as in Grevs, as in the Shrevs, and in the guidelines. Nothing changes here. Here we get 20 marks for treatment, so that's telling the story. We get 10 marks maximum for the importance of the material we've got and where it fits in the airmail story. We get 35 marks for knowledge and research. So remember, that's personal knowledge, personal research, existing knowledge, describing covers. Condition. It's important that you put the best possible cover on every page, not only the condition of the envelope, but the condition of the markings. The postal markings that are on there need to be the best. If it's the only cover known, that's the best you're going to get. But if there's 300 known, you need to find as good a cover as you can get. Rarity, 20 marks. Presentation, 5. So treatment is the way we tell the story. Research and knowledge is the information you've got. That's 55 marks. More than half the marks is not your material. So you need to get all of those marks where possible. So I'm going to start with presentation, because typically as a judge, we go and have a look at everybody's presentation. Presentation's just 5 marks, and a lot of it's going, look, it's not that important because it's only 5 marks. It's probably the most important 5 points that you're ever going to chase, because if your exhibit looks like a gold exhibit, if it looks fantastic, more likely the judges are going to want to give you the marks you deserve. If it looks like it's come out of a garbage bin, there's a good chance, no matter how good your material or how rare or how good your research is your marks are going to be lower. So there's a psychological aspect to judging. So make as much effort in your presentation. If you have to redo pages, redo your pages. Don't let anything slip, all right? Normally 5 points. It's a very important 5 points. So where are we looking for presentation? Does the title page and all other pages look neat? Are the headings clear? Are the headings all in a line rather than up and down and all over the place? Is the write-up easy to read? That's how do we judge treatment and knowledge if we can't read your write-up, right? Is the layout pleasing? Now in postal stationery, we often have train lines, 222 covers, where they're all lined up exactly the same, and it doesn't look so interesting. So look at ways of changing your covers around, changing the information so each of the pages doesn't look exactly the same, however, does look balanced. So there's a bit of effort needs to be taken here. Definitely avoid long paragraphs, all right, and put spaces between your paragraphs if you need to have multiple paragraphs. You're not writing a book. Long grammatical correct sentences are not required. Use short sentences. Put a dash in place of 2 or 3 words. I tell the people that I'm mentoring, if I charge you for every dollar, for every word you're going to put on that page, is there any chance you could reduce the wording? And if they're going to pay me for every word that they put on there, they sure can. It's amazing how you can quickly drop words out. For example, this cover was flown. Don't put that for each cover, just going New York to Managua. That tells us from and where. We don't need to make it a full sentence. So keep your information brief and understandable. Treatment. Treatment's 20 points. It's the hardest 20 points to get and understand, but once you've got your head around it, it's probably the easiest to get, all right? So treatment is story. So it's the development of the story for the subject that's chosen. So remember, treatment and story, those words can move around. So the first thing we need to know, does it develop logically? If we're doing something chronological, there's a good chance that's going to be the logic. But if you've got it all over the place and we don't understand where you're going, then your treatment goes down. Treatment starts with a good title page. If you don't have a good title page explaining what the scope is, what the title is, what your plan's going to be, and giving us a good indication of what the subject is, then it's hard for us to give you good treatment marks. Treatment marks, you should aim for 20 points regardless on the material that you have. All right. So from the title page, is the title correct for the material that you exhibit? Now, it's a little bit easier for Aero because we're going to put Aero covers. So we already know the material is correct. Just make sure the title is correct for that material. All right, is the material complete? We need to have, for a story, not only beginning, middle, and end, but it's got to be a complete story. We can't have holes in it. So we need to know that the material is complete in relationship to the scope that you've chosen on your exhibit. Are you telling the story well? All right, and often that is from the headings on each of the page, and do those headings move logically? Develop in accordance with the plan. So if you put a plan there and that's your order, then make sure that's the order that you have. If you've decided to rearrange the order at the last minute, please change the title plan to reflect your title page to reflect that. So the story, is it a story? Or do you just have 230 covers, email covers that you've stuck on pages? That's the part of treatment. Does the page heading help us understand your logical order, your story, your treatment? And is there duplications? Are you putting 4 out of the 5 known airmail covers because you're trying to build up your rarity? Might work for rarity, however, you're going to get pinged for padding and your treatment's going to put down. So there is no need for duplication. Once you've told the story, move on to your next cover. So just in short form, if you remember, the treatment is development, so developing the story, completeness, that the story starts from the beginning to the end and has everything in between, and the information that you've got on all of those items are correct, then you should get 20 marks for treatment. So treatment is development, completeness, and correctness. So at any time that I ask you what's treatment, when I'm talking to you in front of your frame, you need to tell me that and show me where that is happening. Sorry about a little bit blurry. I haven't done mine yet, but one of the things I ask my people to do is to, when you've done 16 pages, you've got one frame, cover and just show me the headings in order, and does the headings tell the story that you want to tell? Because that's a very important part, that the judges are looking at the headings to see if the story flows. So sometimes in traditional, we're talking about one thing and then one of the headings would be 1 penny and then next heading would be Delarue. Well, what's that got to do with the story? So this helps you define what your story is going to be. So even have a practice, pull out 16 your pages, overline, read the headings. Does that tell a clear story? Importance. Probably the most contentious 10 points. Everyone thinks their material is most important, then the area that we fly in is most important. But we need to have a look, all right? So what determines importance? First of all, the significance of your exhibit in relation to the chosen subject. All right, so development of airmail services out of India is a fairly important and significant subject. Maybe out of Guernsey or Challen Island may not be so important. So we look at that. We look at the overall significance of the subject in relationship to the development of world airmail services. So have you got all the significant items on the subject you've chosen, and where does that sit in the airmail service? So Aerophilately exhibits of areas of greater contribution to the development of world airmail services has a greater importance. Exhibits where the area is less of a contribution, so yes, it's good for that country, but it hasn't helped world development, then it's probably not as important. So here's some of the titles. Great Britain to Australia, 1990 to 39. France to South America. KLM Netherlands to Dutch East Indies. The US to the East Coast of South America, etc. These are all important subjects in the development of airmail route. So see if that fits in there. While geographic areas are generally more important than narrow ones, pioneer, so the earlier the period and development period is generally more important than modern periods. Long periods are generally more important than shorter ones. And be careful, it depends on the country. World War II is 6 years. In some countries, it could be several exhibits, and in other countries, you might be struggling to make up 8 frames. So just be careful when you're picking areas. Philatelic related knowledge, 35 points. So how do we get our 35 points? So the first thing is we must demonstrate that in our write-ups of each of the covers that we have done a correct analysis. So it's important that every marking, every aspect of that cover is described if it's to do with Aerophilately. All right. I don't need individual stamps to make up the rate, but the actual rate that it makes and where it's going to, that's a fairly important. Personal study is shown by the correct analysis of items shown. Personal research, so difference between your study and your research, is new facts relating to the subject. And often if you've discovered something, publish it somewhere. Local paper, publish it in a magazine, in a journal, spread the word, get that fact out there, and then put on your exhibit that this is a new fact that you have discovered. But if you don't publish it, you don't know, we can't decide if that's your personal research. Write-ups require more than a description of what's just seen. So that comes in research and analysis. Face value of the individual stamps is not required. What is required is what is the total and does that break down to be the correct airmail rate. So often rates are made up of surface rates, airmail surcharges, registrations. They need to be spoken about. Does the write-up show existing literature has been used? So it's important that what you've got in your references, that you use those references when describing your covers, when describing the situation, when telling the story. 35 points, 20 points for treatment. That's 55 points before we even start with stamps and rarity and condition, etc. So it's important that you strive to get all of those points. Information should not overwhelm the philatelic material. I love the person that puts a cover, they have a beautiful strike on the cover, and then they blow it up 10 times the size and put it next to it, and it looks more overwhelming than the actual cover itself. Don't do that. Just make sure the information that you have is sufficient to tell us the story, but not overwhelm. Let us look at the material and then look at your description. Avoid long descriptions. Remember, we told you can break down. You don't need complete correct sentences. Just come up with a system, and often those dashes work well. New York dash Miami dash Magna dash, etc. That tells me the route that it's been taken. It's fairly clear. You could put it on your title page if you're worried that that's how you're going to describe it. Personal research by an exhibitor should be identified. Please let us know if you publish and include the references so we can look it up as judges. It's very important. Someone told an exhibitor not to put any of their own publications on the title page. I don't know who thought of that idea, but that's rubbish. If you've written a book, I need to know you've written a book. And once you've written a book, then I need to know if you've actually put in that information on the pages or whether you're just an expert. So it's important that we know everything. Condition, right? Of course, condition varies depending on quantity and quality, but you need to find the best looking cover for every page that you're putting a cover on. Good condition, legible postmarks and cachets, good overall appearance, and then this should all be rewarded. The moment you start cachets you can't read, postmarks you can't read, torn edge covers, not good. Once condition starts looking bad, it starts dropping 8, 7, 6. You're losing good marks. So always have good conditions. Stamps on covers should also be the best condition. Now, crash covers, however, may be in poor condition, but where possible, we need the clearest possible mark that identifies that this is a crash cover. What's very important is if you or someone has repaired or you have a fake item, you need to describe it. If you don't describe it, you will be penalised. You're penalised because you're putting in something that's not good and you haven't told us about. You're penalised because you may not know it's not good, so therefore your knowledge is not good as well. So be very careful on that. So condition, 10 points. Rarity. Don't confuse cost of an item, the value of an item, with the rarity of the item. Maybe the cost of the item because it's the only use of that stamp for traditionalists, but for airmail, it may be 10 covers flowing that route. So the cost of the item is not important. What is important is how it directly relates to the scarcity as an aerophilately item. That's most important. The easiest thing to do is if there's sources of information and there's one of X amount recorded, give us that information. A, it's good research. B, we know exactly how rare it is. Please avoid using this is a unique cover. This is a very rare cover. Very rare to who? If it's only known one, then there's only one recorded. That's how it should be. Very rare means you've only seen one, but there's 3,000 exist. Unique in what way? So please don't use those terms. We see them a lot. Often looking at auction catalogues will give you a guide to rarity. If nothing's recorded, I've seen people state in their rarity statement. I've been following the auction catalogues for the last 20 years. I've only seen 2 of these covers in that 20 years. That is giving me information on how you've come to that point that this is a rare item. You've done the research. You've done it over a long period of time. Take some credit for it. All right. Doesn't exist. In this case, they've red matted it to make it that this is the rare cover. All right. So this is Baghdad to Tokyo via Berlin and Moscow. It was the quickest route. How many more of these exist? This is the whole thing. So you can see that they've documented as much information as possible and have told us that, really this is the only cover that they've seen. All right, I'm about to wrap up soon and then we'll look at the chat box and answer some of those questions, and thank you for persisting through this hour with me. Final covers, we've covered some of the areas to produce a good exhibit. Go over these again, but make sure you read the rules. That's always very important. I've spoken about the judging of the exhibit. I've tried to give you an insight to what judges are looking for. If judges are looking for something and you don't want to show them, then accept the mark you get. But if you understand what they're looking for, give it to them. You're going to be happier. All right. So all judges need to exhibit regularly. They must stay on top of the rules. They also know that your same exhibit needs to improve over a period of time. So what was a large goal 20 years ago the same exhibit may not get large gold today because people are getting better and better. People are doing these Zoom workshops. They're going to workshops. They're being mentored by people. So best of luck when you're exhibiting, you're judging. Enjoy it. I enjoy it. I enjoy judging because I love looking at everyone's exhibit. A little secret, I actually learn every time I read something, even a new exhibitor's exhibit, I learn something from it. So there's always something that I haven't seen before. I enjoy it all. So after all, it's a hobby. Have fun. Keep exhibiting. Keep enjoying it. All right, future exhibits. So PK's gone over all these. So basically, there's four FIP next year that you can enter into. Of course, there's the AMSI 26. You can enter into that as well. And a plug for Melbourne, when we get some dates in 2027, we'll definitely have Aero and Astro in Australia. So thank you for listening, and I will.
Yeah. Thank you, Glen.